scientific death.
For decades, the coastal village of Tokaimura served as the proud center of Japan's nuclear ambitions. By the 1990s, the tax revenue from the sprawling facilities dotting the shoreline had built the wealthy, comfortable bedtown. The residents here weren't transient workers. Nearly 3/4 of the community owned their homes, and many families had worked the surrounding land for generations. They were deeply rooted, physically and financially anchored to this specific geography. That quiet stability ended on the morning of September 30th, 1999. At exactly 10:35 a.m., inside a uranium processing plant operated by JCO, workers accidentally poured highly enriched uranium into a precipitation tank. They triggered a criticality, an uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction. The moment was marked by a sudden, brilliant blue-white flash of light. Yet outside the processing room, there was no explosion. No sirens wailed. While a deadly nuclear reaction raged inside the facility, the surrounding village remained completely silent, unaware of the danger. Data from surveys conducted after the disaster highlights the gap in public awareness. Only 14% of local residents even knew the JCO facility was a nuclear plant. To the rest of the neighborhood, it was just another indistinct building. As the reaction continued, the central government's Science and Technology Agency struggled to grasp the severity of the crisis. Their sluggish, bureaucratic response created an information void during the crucial early hours of the emergency. During that void, massive quantities of neutrons were silently flooding into the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Neutrons are electrically neutral, highly penetrative particles that cause severe cellular damage, but they are invisible, and without any official warnings, citizens continued hanging laundry and walking to the store. The initial radiation release caused immediate physical harm. However, the government's silence that followed led to a more lasting psychological trauma, a community blinded to a lethal threat by their own government. Hundreds of miles away in Tokyo, STA officials held press conferences that minimized the unfolding event. They managed the crisis as a contained industrial mishap, appearing detached from the sprawling public health emergency on the ground. Back in Tokaimura, the local leadership realized help was not coming. Mayor Tatsuya Murakami took swift, unilateral action, bypassing sluggish federal channels to protect his citizens. 4.5 hours after the chain reaction began, Mayor Murakami ordered the immediate evacuation of every resident living within a 350-meter radius of the JCO facility. That order triggered immediate panic. Residents were abruptly pulled from their homes by emergency responders, swathed in protective hazmat suits and heavy gas masks. Confusion reigned as families were herded out of the danger zone. While the mayor's quick decision saved lives, it proved the federal safety net had failed. Local leaders were forced to draw arbitrary lines in the dirt against an invisible, spreading danger. To document the consequences of that day, independent researchers like Professor Koichi Hasegawa initiated a comprehensive field survey. They collected detailed, handwritten testimonies from 946 households to reveal the unacknowledged fallout of the disaster. This map and scatterplot show the core statistical correlation the researchers discovered. They mapped the rate of reported physical sickness against physical proximity to the plant. The closer a resident lived to the epicenter, the more likely they were to suffer physical symptoms on the day of the accident. A significant anomaly in the data sat just outside the official evacuation boundary. More than 21% of the people living in the zone between 350 to 500 meters from the plant reported suffering acute symptoms. They were explicitly told they were safe, yet their bodies reacted to the exposure. The survey documented severe, immediate reactions among these residents. People reported intense bodily weakness, severe nausea, and a metallic taste in their mouths, a classic biological indicator of radiation exposure. In the days following the flash, terrified families adopted desperate coping mechanisms. They threw away their garden vegetables, sealed their windows shut with tape, and relied on bottled mineral water to survive in their own homes. The data highlights a significant gap in nuclear disaster planning. The invisible boundaries drawn by distant bureaucrats on a map rarely align with the actual physical and psychological damage suffered by the people breathing the air on the ground. The physical radiation levels eventually subsided, But the acute fears of September 30th morphed into chronic sociological damage that haunted the community for years. Residents found themselves carrying the deep cultural stigma of the hibakusha, the radiation victim. Locals reported being looked at dubiously when traveling outside the village, and former friends from neighboring towns quietly stopped visiting. The anxiety was particularly devastating for parents. Many shared the fear that their children would be bullied in school or deemed unmarriageable in the future simply because of their zip code at the time of the flash. This isolation triggered a collapse of public trust. The survey revealed that over 90%. It is an inescapable economic trap. The residents own their homes here, and the village's civic infrastructure is funded entirely by nuclear tax revenue. Leaving simply isn't a financial reality for most families. This is the ultimate lingering tragedy of Tokaimura. It is a state of torn consciousness, a community scarred by a nuclear disaster, yet economically held hostage by the very reactors that poisoned them.